Welcome back to Nails Before Films. Continuing from last time, I'll be talking about Dune Part 2, which I watched in IMAX because I really enjoyed Part 1 on a plane. Again, I didn't get the popcorn bucket, but I have the novel here and I'm still trying to finish it. Anyway, I like Dune Part 2 as well, but not as much as I did Part 1. I'll explain why in this video. There's no surprise at the end. Like I said in my last video, I'm taking a break from glow-in-the-dark nails, but thank you if you still finished this video. I appreciate that. Let's get into Dune Part 2. Same as the last movie, this one is still visually stunning and well acted. My problem with Part 2 is that it tries to do too much. While the story is still coherent and the pacing is fine, they just started throwing things in without thoroughly developing or explaining them. For example, I think the Baron's other nephew, the one played by Austin Butler, is an interesting character and quite significant to the story. Yet we don't really know anything about him except that he's a psycho. They casually sprinkle in information like he killed his mom, but don't elaborate on that. I want to know more about him. Why did he kill his mom? Why did the Baron choose him to be his successor? And what's his plan to take down the Emperor? He's dead before I learn any of this. While his intro is a bit too long, it's very strong and made me think that he was going to be Paul's arch enemy in this movie. But no, they just duel at the end for like 10 minutes and that was it. I haven't finished the book yet, but I suspect it goes deeper into his character than in the movie. They also throw in stuff from the book that is cool or shocking, but doesn't explain the significance. For example, Jessica being the Baron's daughter is a huge deal, but it ultimately changes nothing. Paul still kills the Baron, and his plan to marry the princess and become the Emperor remains the same. I really don't understand what Paul means when he says to Jessica that they survive by being Harkonnens. Like, the Baron would have no problem killing them if it weren't for the Bene Gesserit. And he instructed his men to dump them in the desert to die. So the two of them surviving the massacre had nothing to do with Jessica being the Baron's daughter. If he's talking about how they will survive in the future, his plan stays the same regardless of this information. He has no problem killing the Baron and his nephew. That line throws me off because nothing changes after this revelation. They should have shown us how it affected Paul, maybe even reconsidering his plan. It's supposed to be a big deal, but it really has no bearing on the story. If that's the way it is in the book, I wouldn't hold it against them, but I highly doubt that Paul just brushed it off in the book as well. Another problem I have is Zendaya's character, Chani. Don't get me wrong, her acting is fine. I just think Chani isn't that important in the grand scheme of things. She takes up a lot of screen time, but isn't all that significant in my opinion. It would be better if we get to see some guilt from Paul or hesitation regarding his plan to marry the princess. Also, I would like to know the full prophecy earlier. If I knew Chani was a part of the prophecy, it would create some tension as to whether or not Paul was using her, especially when his ultimate goal was to become the Emperor. The movie really only focuses on Paul's reluctance to become the Messiah, but there should be much more going on with him. Does he really love Chani? Does he feel bad for using her? Does he really care about the ferments, or are they just a means to an end? There is so much they can do with Paul, yet they just focus on his vision of the Holy War and how he's unwilling to be the Messiah. Maybe it's vague on purpose so that the audience could judge his character on their own, but I just want to see more emotional struggles from Paul and how he feels about betraying his love and using the ferments. Speaking of the ferments, I really like Stilgar and would have loved to see more from him. Yes, I'm biased because I have a thing for middle-aged men, but his character is genuinely intriguing. He represents the more religious ferments, and I want to know why he's a believer other than he's from the South. Why does his belief matter so much to him? I also wish we got to see more of his interaction with Paul and why he believes so firmly that Paul is the Messiah. Everybody laughed when he said that Paul denying he was the Messiah further proved that he was, but that's actually a disturbing mentality. People will believe what they believe, no matter what's presented to them. I really like that scene because it perfectly shows how humans can twist anything into what they believe. The scene where he shouts to Paul that it doesn't matter what he believes, what matters is that he believes is also great. And I wish more scenes explored the religious theme of Dune. I'm happy we get to see more of Stilgar in part 2. In part 1, he was just a cold, fervent leader who wanted nothing to do with House Atreides. It's interesting to see how he went from that to the more human Stilgar in part 2. He can be serious, he can be funny, he can be emotional, and he can be stubborn. I was really worried when he told Paul to kill him. I was like, please don't. You're such an interesting character. I'm really happy Paul didn't do it, and his reasoning was sound too. Oh, I'm also happy that Gurney survived both movies. Like I said before, I have a thing for middle-aged men, and I really liked his character from the first movie. I know Josh Brolin wrote a really homoerotic poem about Timothy Chalamet, but at least he made fun of himself on Saturday Night Live. Oh, I'm getting sidetracked here. Let's get back to talking about Dune Part 2. My last complaint is a minor one. The music is so freaking loud in IMAX. Look, I love Hans Zimmer. Who doesn't? But man, my ears hurt for a couple of hours after watching the movie. This wasn't a problem last time because I watched part 1 on the plane, which had the opposite issue of the sound being terrible. I know loudness is too expected from Hans Zimmer, but I forgot how deafening it could be, especially in IMAX. Other than the loudness, the music is great and fits the movie well. Another thing is that I kept getting jump scared whenever they made a loud noise. For example, when the woman explained to Jessica how they obtained the water of life, she hit the ground to call the baby Sandworm. I jumped because of that. I don't know why, but I just kept getting jump scared when I watched part 2 in the theater. It's so embarrassing. The guy next to me must be thinking, why is this girl getting scared over nothing? That being said, I will still watch the next one in IMAX if I can. Maybe I'll bring earplugs with me next time. While I mostly mention what I didn't like about Dune Part 2 in this video, I really enjoyed the movie. The visuals are still stunning, and while the story is slightly messier than Part 1, it's still very interesting and coherent. The build-up is a bit slow, but the climatic battle is definitely very satisfying. It's engaging to see the pieces fall together, and Paul finally achieves what he set out to do in Part 1. While I personally like the first movie more, Part 2 does have a stronger ending and feels more complete as a film. But maybe there was just a bit too much going on story-wise. I'll definitely try to watch the next one in IMAX again. I just have to finish both Dune and Dune Messiah before Part 3 comes out. Hope you guys like my review and nails. I enjoyed making the sandworms so much. The sandworms are just so cute. I know it looks like an anus, but that's the way they look, okay? At least mine looks less like a flashlight. Anyway, as always, like, subscribe, comment, share, do what you want. Keep nailing it, and I guess go read Dune Messiah, people.